My name is Dan, and in last week's video, I tried to answer whether or not backpacking is actually dangerous. Spoiler alert, it's not. Or at least hiking and backpacking are relatively safe activities. But if they are relatively safe, then why do so many of us still get scared when we're on the trail? I definitely count myself in that group, and I am not ashamed to admit it. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what are the most common things backpackers are afraid of and why. And secondly, what can you actually do about being scared on the trail so you're not so afraid? Two quick caveats before we begin. Number one, this video does not apply if you have had some type of traumatic experience. That is well beyond my skill set. And number two, this also doesn't apply to in-the-moment fear that is actually warranted. Like if you are one of the few unlucky people to actually get attacked by a bear. If you're scared in that moment, I don't blame you. So instead, the backpacking fear that I'm going to be discussing is that type of fear that is not based on something that has happened or is about to happen, but nevertheless, it still leads to anxiety while on the trail. So starting off, like I mentioned, I am not afraid to admit that I still get scared while backpacking. To share a story with you, my very first backpacking trip was by myself, which I don't recommend doing, by the way. And I was scared the entire time. There were a couple specific things I was scared of, such as bears, which I didn't actually see any, as well as lightning, because there was a thunderstorm all night long, and that just scared the crap out of me. I'm still scared of lightning, and I'll always be scared of lightning. But beyond that, I remember distinctly this feeling after I got into camp of just being completely and utterly alone, and how scared that made me feel. Now, for some people, that feeling of being by themselves is rejuvenating, and it is for me sometimes as well, but for the most part, especially on my first trip, it just led to fear. And I still get scared on backpacking trips sometimes. In fact, my most recent trip, which also happened to be another solo overnight trip in the Smokies, I was scared almost the entire time. And fear is a perfectly normal response. Don't ever let anyone tell you that, oh, you shouldn't get scared while you're backpacking. Again, it's normal. It's what keeps us alert and ultimately what keeps us safe. But having too much fear is definitely a bad thing because you don't want it to ruin your trip. So what makes backpackers scared? Well, it's really quite a lot of things, but some of the most common examples are, of course, animals. The biggest one being bears. It seems like almost everyone is afraid of bears, but also some other animals like snakes and spiders and ticks, which is one of my big fears, by the way. And plenty of other fears like freezing to death, lightning, getting lost, and that good old-fashioned childhood fear, the dark. And ultimately, many of our fears are really the fear of the unknown. We're afraid of bears because we don't know if we're going to encounter one when we're on the trail. We're afraid of lightning because we don't know if we're going to get struck by lightning. We're afraid of the dark because we don't know what's out there making all that noise rustling in the leaves. And that last one, by the way, fear for many people, including myself, is most intense at night. When the lights go out and you, again, do not know what that noise is out there that is keeping you up at night. So what can you actually do to minimize your backpacking fear? And notice I said minimize. You may never be able to completely eliminate your fear, but you can at least do some things in order to bring it down. So what I'm going to do is propose a 3.5-step system. The first step is education. So if you're afraid of something, learn about that fear. If you're afraid of getting lost, learn how to navigate properly or how to use a GPS system. If you're afraid of lightning, learn what you should actually do when you're in a thunderstorm to try and keep yourself safe. If you're afraid of ticks, like I am, learn about some of the things you can do to prevent tick bites, like wearing long pants or using permethrin. Overall, the more you learn and the more you increase your skill set, the more confident you're going to feel when you're on the trail, and that will really go a long way in diminishing some of your fears. Number 2 in this process is applying logic. For example, if you're afraid of bears, tell yourself the fact that, you know what, the chances of me even seeing a bear are really small, let alone actually being attacked or killed by one. Or if you're afraid of the dark, tell yourself the fact that, you know what, it's still the same forest, and there's probably nothing actually out there other than squirrels and chipmunks. Now, I will say that applying logic doesn't really work all the time, or at least not for many people. It doesn't really work for me all that much, but if you are one of the lucky few where it works, then definitely use it. And number 3 in this process is experience. Eventually, you just have to get out there and face your fears. And the more experience you get, the better you will feel as time goes on. This definitely happened for me. Again, that very first backpacking trip I went on was the time that I have been the most scared while backpacking. And there have been many trips since then where I didn't feel afraid at all. And even though I still get scared on some trips, it has been diminished quite a lot just from the fact that I keep pushing myself to go back out there and face whatever I'm afraid of. But I do recommend that you start slowly. So don't go backpacking by yourself for your very first trip like I did. Go with somebody else. Or even better, if you've never even been camping, go camp in your backyard or go front country camping. Do something that's just going to get you accustomed to actually being outside in a tent or go on day hikes. Again, just anything you can do to get yourself used to being on the trail and being at camp. Or if you're afraid of bears or poisonous snakes, go hiking where there are no bears or poisonous snakes. Again, just getting you used to the outdoors and hiking is going to make you feel a lot better in the long run. And then after your backpacking trip, don't forget to think about how you felt. If you did feel scared about certain things, think about why and what you could have done differently to minimize those fears. And lastly, the point 5 of this 3.5-step process are just a few bonus tips and tricks. My first tip is do not do any worst case scenarios with your fears. Now, I generally love doing worst case scenarios with any types of decisions I need to make or challenges that I face, but when it comes to your fear, doing that can really let your imagination run wild. For example, if I'm thinking to myself, well, if I do have a bear encounter, what's the worst that can happen? Oh. Holy sh! Yeah, like I said, your imagination can run wild if you use worst case scenarios with your fears, so just don't do it. My second tip is distraction. Just distract yourself with something. Whether it's talking to yourself or talking with another person, or start a YouTube channel. That's actually been a fantastic way for me to alleviate my fear because I can talk right into my camera and distract myself from any fears that I have going on around me. But if you don't want to do that, then just do something to take your mind off your fears. My third tip is meditation. Now, I am by no means any type of a meditation or yoga expert, but I will say this, I have at least done some controlled breathing when I'm on the trail and I'm really afraid of something. And it helps a lot. Just some simple deep breaths is sometimes all you need to diminish one of your fears. Also, another tip, especially at night, don't go to bed early. When I was on my most recent Smokies trip, I went to bed at 5:30. Now that was partly because it was raining and cold outside and I just didn't have anything else to do, but I should have at least distracted myself and kept myself awake in the tent instead of trying to actually just go to bed at 5:30, which is not going to happen. The issue you run into with going to bed early is that you're going to keep yourself awake way past when you would actually normally fall asleep. Now, of course, if you're absolutely exhausted and you just need to go to bed, then fine, listen to your body, but overall, don't try to force yourself to go to sleep when you're not going to. And my last tip is to just laugh sometimes. This sounds kind of stupid, but you know what? I've used it so many times and it works. Just think about the fact that your fear is probably based on something a little silly and just laugh to yourself. Ha 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 ha. You would be surprised what that does to diminish your fear. And I want to end on the fact that fear ebbs and flows. It comes and it goes, it increases and it decreases, and you might not be scared at all on some trips, but then you will be scared on some others. But again, try to think about why that was and what you can be doing differently the next time you're out there. So what are some of your biggest backpacking fears? Any stories you want to share of when you were really scared on the trail? Anything you did to conquer those fears? Let us know in the comments. As always, stick around another minute for a few bloopers. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and of course, when you're out there on the trail the next time, have fun out there. My name... Frog in my throat. And I am I still hate lightning. Stick around. No, that's not right. That's not right at all. Tick bikes. They don't make tick bikes. I think I like sitting better. I have to move my tape now. Got it!